This is Amanda Brookover about to start TAP 1.
When I think about doing a trip into boundary waters, consider doing a trip with individuals who have not paddled before. Some of the things that I consider.
So I'm thinking that he is fidgety, so I'm going to have to look over that. He's currently talking about what I think is canoeing.
You really want to break it down into steps, and I think it's most important to first consider.
He doesn't have a lot of eye contact.
Looking at the abilities of the individuals who are on the trip. If people have paddled canoes or kayaks before, and if they have outdoor living skills, or if they're really fresh.
I do have a little prior knowledge of canoeing and kayaking.
Green to the whole experience. But being that the boundary waters is
I would have to look up for my pre-assignment controls what boundary waters are.
a wilderness area, and it's managed by the federal the Forest Service, there are checkpoints in place where that all organized trips have to follow.
I might have to look up that organization to make sure I represent them right during an interpretation.
So what you want to first consider is how long you intend to stay out. There are designated points of travel where
He's listing, so I'm going to keep note of that while interpreting.
where you have an entry point that you have to get a permit for, and you have to outline your trip for the individuals in the Forest Service, making sure that they know where you're going to be going and when you're coming out. And one of the things that I've found that's real helpful for that is to look at a guidebook. There's many guidebooks.
I might look at guidebooks to represent them correctly. So far, he stutters a lot, so I'm going to have to keep that in mind, not stumble upon my own interpreting while he's stumbling upon his words.
To traveling in the boundary waters, and they actually have trips broken down into difficulties, from rugged to intermediate to just leisure trips, and in those they give just brief descriptions of how long the portages are.
I think that that's an important fact about what he's talking about, the different levels in leisurely kayaking or canoeing.
And the numbers of campsites on various lakes, the type of fish you might find, the wildlife you might find in the different areas. So I am a firm believer in sitting down and doing a little pre-trip planning, making sure that everybody's expectations of what
I would definitely note that this is before any canoeing actually happens, and that this is the very first step, the planning process that he will soon conduct.
we're going to be doing and where we're going to be traveling, our meshing, and everybody's comfortable with the extent of what our trip is going to entail. And looking at that, some of the things you have to do are there's certain entry points in the boundary waters that are a lot more popular, and it's all kind of guided.
Again, I'm not really sure what boundary waters are, so I will need to look that up.
By quota system, where any given day, X number of entries.
He talks about his personal quota system. Not really sure what that means. Maybe where people usually go into these said boundary waters, how many people don't go in at certain areas, I'm not too sure.
Entries are allowed at certain points. So if you're planning to go into one of the more, say, an easier, an entry point that might not have as many portages.
He's talking about entry points, and I believe I know what that means. That means actually entering the waters, not to be confused with entering off of a dock or something.
It might not be as difficult, a lot more paddling and less portaging. Those entry points are a lot more popular, and also
there is a few terminologies that I am not familiar with, so I will need to conduct research to figure out what they exactly mean.
So so they fill up a lot quicker, and you're going to want to make sure that you get right on the stick, even as early as April or February, March, April, something early.
He's talking about days when you can, which are the best days. These are important facts to anybody not privy to canoeing knowledge.
In the spring to do your planning for this, because it's a very popular thing to do and a popular place to visit. When you're looking at these things, you also want to consider the type of equipment that's going to be.
He continues to fidget throughout the video.
Be necessary. It's not necessary for everybody to bring their own pots and pans and stoves. You want to break down who's got an operable stove, who's got the right kind of cookware, who's going to be doing the food, the menu preparation, and just really dial it in so that everybody's feeling like they have things that they can contribute to.
So maybe in ASL, I'm thinking that I can put these in different groups, as in many people, they bring pots, they bring pans, etc., just to explain more in detail about this camping trip.
To the trip planning. So once you've got your entry point picked out, you're comfortable with the amount of time you're going to be spending, you start to work on your menu, you get your...
He reiterates some information.
If people have not paddled before, you might want to do a little pre-trip paddling together, maybe even go over some procedural things like if a canoe was to tip over, how you'd get back in the canoe. And
he continues to explain some more pre-trip procedures that you may want to conduct. Not sure how I would interpret that yet.
And another thing that a lot of people don't realize, and they tell you this when you watch your informational video getting your permit, that there are black bears, so your food needs to be hung up, and you'll even go over a system by which you use a pulley system of.
Throughout this explanation, he continues to seem like he's just now thinking of the information.
Hoisting your food up into the air each evening. So those are some things to consider when doing a trip. But the biggest thing about it is that you want to keep safety in mind, and it needs to be fun for everybody. And a trip like this should be fun and can be fun with the right preparation going into it. And all that takes a little bit of time and forethought.
At the end of the video, he explains some major points about the trip and what to take note of.